This is the Team Objection podcast for May 14th, 2020, episode 437. Our first episode of the three of us in the new digs with the sparkly tech background that the two of these guys requested. I do think it's a good fit. As an added bonus, it sort of makes it America colored because there's that grayish white on the bottom with the red and also lots of blue. So go America.
Less now.
Oh.
Yeah, Chris is all make America great again with these red, white, and blue colors, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Chris is all about make America great again. Why aren't you wearing your hat, Chris?
Well, I just
you wear it all day.
It's in the wash. Too many sweat stains.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, makes sense.
You wear it
'Cause you're outside
24/7.
protesting.
Yeah,
You wear it to bed. Yeah, I get it.
There's going to be some inevitable times when it's going to have to come off your head. Otherwise, you're going to lose your hairline. That's what happens when you wear a hat too much, or especially if it's too tight.
Yep.
So, just a quick programming note. Because we've been doing basketball again for the YouTube channel, which you are either already watching this on or should be instead of the audio format, we are kind of doing shorter shows for the foreseeable future. That's also dovetailing with the fact that my work is busy as hell. Shaun's work's not in phenomenal shape, and Dave's just getting back into the groove after having been off for a few months for I was going to say maternity leave. And then I was going to say fraternity leave, and I finally got around to paternity leave.
Bro.
Yeah.
Bro.
I like the idea of fraternity leave. That's why I had to stop myself and explain. So I was like, you would have understood what I meant if I had said maternity leave. And then when I was going to say fraternity leave, we lost the whole thread.
Bro.
But yeah, shorter episodes for the time being. That still means like a half hour. We're just not going that hour version. It's kind of like the old days when we were going to do 2 a week, and that lasted for like 3 months.
Yeah, but we got like 18 episodes out of it.
Yeah, it was a smart way to pad the episode number. We're going to get to 500 sooner than we would have if we hadn't.
Mm-hmm. It's a true story. Man,
500 is a big
climbing
turning
towards
point. We're going to change the format and the everything at 500.
Shaun, you don't look like yourself right now. Like, I'm having trouble getting used to this
Well,
right now.
if I kind of like lean back, it almost looks like I'm totally bald. I look like One Punch Man. Which I like, because I like One Punch Man. I tried that workout. It doesn't work to the level that it worked for him.
You're going to have to describe that workout to Dave.
Oh, it's 100 push-ups, Dave.
Okay.
I believe it's a 3-kilometer run, 100 push-ups, 100 squats, and that is maybe it.
I mean, that's a decent workout. You're going to get a good sweat out of that, but it's not that crazy. 3 kilometers is what? Less than 2 miles?
Yeah,
no,
Dave,
not even a mile and a half.
I got to tell you, everybody's like, how did you get so strong? They're talking to One Punch Man, and he's like, okay, I will divulge my secret. And he's like, every day, no matter how hard it gets, you must keep going. 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 3-kilometer run. Never taking any break. Everybody's like, are you fucking joking? This guy can like jump to the moon and back, and that's all he did.
I feel like that's not the type of workout that would get you there. I mean, I feel like that's like, okay, I want to kind of maintain my body shape, and that's about it.
And I mean, and that's the joke, but it's hilarious to me.
That is. No, I'm just so weirded out. Like, you with such short hair. I can't remember the last time I've seen you with that short hair. The quarantine's got to you, huh?
No, well, okay. Yes and no. My hair eventually got too long to where I hated it. And when it starts looking goofy, there's always a phase where I start making it go straight up in the air, because to me that looks better than when it's flat. I would rather, I mean, in a way, off my forehead. So like kind of what you're doing, but I like more sporadic. And then once it starts getting too heavy for even that to work, I'm like, okay, it just has to go. I'm not going to go to salon the day that they open it. So, big COVID farm. So yeah, we just turned on the electric razor and went crazy.
Man, I mean, I guess that's the easy way to do it. Just
it was kind of fun.
buzz it right off.
Except it kept pulling my hair out, but
it was not a very good razor then, was it?
Well, like, cause my hair's so long, and she has like the safety clip thing. So it snags the clip itself like a comb through thick, mangy hair.
But it also means you need new clippers.
Mm-hmm.
Because whenever I have a beard, I always have like a beard trimmer or an electric razor. Whenever it gets to the point where it's like actually pulling and snagging, it's like, all right, it's usually after like 2 or 3 years, I have to go, okay, this is starting to hurt me, and I'm not doing that anymore. So you're going in the trash.
Yeah.
I will say, Dave and I. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say it's pretty easy. There's we got a clipper on Costco because I did my wife did my hair too. and it's okay. I think they're trying okay, but it was we had a Clippers at Costco. It was like $40, and well worth it. They were good. They were really good Clippers.
Couldn't you just throw your wife a bone and be like, she did a really great job?
She did.
Like, not even for your wife can you be like, I would say a 4 or 5 out of 10. Yeah, it was fine. And she could have done better. I wrote her a review afterwards and sent it to her email.
Looking in the mirror and looking at the camera right now, I can't even tell the difference between when I went to the salon and her cutting it. So I think I'm just gonna keep cutting my hair.
I mean, honestly, like, this is shorter than I would prefer, but it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
It was free.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is, I go to sports clips, which is like, I guess, a really douchey thing to do. I didn't know that.
Bro.
I wish I could.
Bro.
Yeah, but they give you a massage.
Mm-hmm.
No, actually, I don't like their massage because they use that thing, which I don't care about. But they do a shampoo. The shampoo.
Which is why I go to Fantastic Sam's.
Yeah. Now,
No.
if I can just have Maisie shampoo my hair, then
You
I
buy
get
one of
all
those
the
chairs.
service, no chance of COVID, or at least lower, and for free. Pretty
Man,
sweet
yeah,
deal.
You just got to buy one of those chairs that like lean back into the sink, and you're all set. That's what I need
Maisie's
to do,
screaming
'cause-
at me that she's not going to shampoo, but I'll say, oh, not for
So sorry,
free.
Chris.
I'm sorry. She will shampoo, but not for free.
Everyone is wrong once or twice in their life.
So wait, Chris, you don't want shampoo?
No, I do. That's why I go to Fantastic Sam's.
Oh, they do that.
Yeah,
They do that as
that's
well?
just standard.
Okay.
Like, I know like Great Clips and some other places do it if it's extra or something. It's standard there, and it's also a place where I frequent. So that's a slam dunk for me because there's nothing worse than when you get, especially when you do like the clippers on the sides and back and stuff that gets really short, like itchy. So if you have anything else to do that day, you either have to shower a second time or get home when you're in the middle of the day or whatever. So yeah, that's perfect for
They
me.
shower after?
If you have all that loose hair and stuff, otherwise if you go to bed, it's gonna get all over your pillow and
Whoa.
stuff.
No, I mean, they shower. I'm sorry.
They shampoo, yeah, after.
Whoa. My place shampoo's
That's a-
first thing.
That's what my Sport Clips does is buzzes first and then shampoos.
Huh.
Dude. I've been
And-
getting hosed.
I guess so.
I guess I'm not a good enough guy. I
Well-
don't need my hair clipper place to tell me that like rock out, bro, with your balls out. Like I don't even tell me it's good to be a guy. Just do my hair. Stop putting sports. I know. Go in like the day. They'll be like, we're sports all the time, but it's 2:00, so here's some rodeo.
Yeah.
It's like, great.
It's on ESPN.
Here's the Super Bowl
Cool.
from 1960.
Here's
Yeah,
hour
exactly.
9 of Sports Center. They've talked about these news stories the entire day.
I actually have to tell you guys
Who's
really
better,
quick.
LeBron or Jordan?
Yeah, exactly. We went. I was driving home yesterday, and they had the Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl on it
Oof.
on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating to hear the commentary, though. I was listening right after halftime. So after halftime, things actually got worse for the Patriots before they got better.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And just hearing the announcers being like, "Oh man, the Hawks stepping on the Patriots' throats. It's over." And then you hear one of the announcers like, "I don't know, like Bill or whatever his name is, like this is a good team, and if they can put some good strings together, they can come right back." And so interesting to hear the commentators in the moment when you know
Not knowing
when you know what the
coming,
outcome
yeah.
is. Apparently, they tried an onside kick that like failed. And a lot of the announcers were like, "That it's over. Like that was a gamble, and they lost, and they can pack their bags." It's like,
I mean, not to go too sports heavy, but when Julio Jones made that incredible catch, I thought that game was over for sure.
Yeah, I mean, at
So-
28-3 in the third quarter,
Yeah.
that was like a 99.1% win expectancy, something thereabouts. So
Yeah.
they were right to be like, yeah, I mean, this game's effectively over because if the Falcons had just actually, controlled clock and not been dumbasses, they
Mhm.
really should have coasted to victory there. And
Yeah.
they didn't. And that's going to sting their franchise for a long time.
so I mean,
Yeah.
the sports element definitely is interesting to me, but even non-sports, just witnessing like what the moment in time was, even though you know what the outcome, the unexpected outcome is now, I was like, "Oh, I'm actually really into this. I'm more into this way more now than I was even when it was happening."
I gotta say that it is really interesting watching The Last Dance, that the Bulls documentary, for two reasons. One, for the exact same thing you just said, Shaun. I mean, obviously, I know the results of all of these things. I've got a lot of it memorized. I've got a lot. They showed on episode 5. They showed the '93 finals, which just knife in my heart, basically. but so it's really interesting to see what you saw in the moment and now through this different lens almost after you know what happens. And also second, my wife is watching with me and actually very much enjoying it, like asking me to watch it. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. And she doesn't know any of it. So it's really kind of cool seeing through her eyes almost of like, wow, I can't believe that happened. Whoa, Rodman was really like that? Like some of that type of stuff.
Well, I think it's really interesting that, like, to us, to me, I won't speak for you guys. It almost feels like, oh yeah, 3-3. It was almost like a foregone conclusion the way that my mind looks at it now. Jordan's the greatest. He won 3-3, but like at the time, it was really anything but. And so to sound cliche, you were really witnessing history and everything it took to actually get those 2 3-peats. It's crazy.
It's stunning to me how low scoring those games were. You see like 84-79 frequently on those games.
Yep. And it wasn't even just a pace thing. It is certainly a big part of it. And it's also not as much defense as I think people want to give it credit. There are, I think, in a lot of ways, some better defenders back then. But at the same time, I was watching a couple of different finals games with Jordan and the Suns in '93 as well. He just carved us up. And I mean, granted, we weren't the best defensive team to begin with. I mean, you're playing a lot of guys that aren't necessarily tremendous defenders. But Dan Marley, a well-regarded defender, cannot stay in front of him at all.
It's so close. When I talk about Jordan, the reason I say he's definitely great, he probably is my vote for greatest of all time, but there's almost like a caveat because when you watch him play, it is as though he is ahead of his time in a literal sense. The way that he's moving compared to the way everyone else is moving, it's like he was the first one of the new era of basketball. And everyone else was like the 1960 Celtics still. It's amazing. Going back and watching it on VHS, I was amazed at the difference in just movement and how he handled it. Like he moves like a modern player, and no one else was really doing that.
To the point where it almost looks like, God, nobody played defense back then. Like everyone talks about how good the defense is. Like when you watch just those games, it's like, man, nobody's playing defense. They're just letting him go right by. They're not even closing out, like that type of stuff.
Yeah, like Marley talked about how he couldn't defend against Jordan's crossover. And Jordan had an above average crossover, and especially for his time. But like that one move, whether he just to shift the way the defender was leaning on his balance, was enough to basically let him blow by people because he was either going to stay on his dominant hand or cross over and come back across. Imagine somebody in the 90s trying to stay in front of like Kyrie, who I don't like as a player, but who has really good handles. Imagine that sorcery back then when these guys are so stiff and upright. And think about the adjusted nature of defense now, where like back then, you look at defensive efficiency numbers now with the modern metrics, they're not very good. Adjusting for pace, these defenses weren't phenomenal. It was a more physical game, sure, but there was also illegal defense and hand checking and other rules in place that also had an impact.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy, but you say back then, I think even Steve Nash always, it stuck out. He was like, someone asked him, like, are you sad that you're not playing anymore? Because he probably had a couple years left in him if his back didn't go out. And he was like, no, the way that these point guards move and score now, like, I don't want to try to stay in front of Russell Westbrook, Kyrie Irving. Like, even in that few years, there was such a big difference.
So you actually lead into a fantastic point that I heard, and it was on one of the Ringer podcasts. And, people talk a lot about different generations of basketball players. And someone made a point that Michael Jordan is the best basketball player ever. Okay? LeBron James is the best at playing basketball. And I think that's a really important distinction to make because Michael Jordan will win at all costs. And that's like his biggest things. He will win. He will find a way to win. But LeBron, as far as his talent and skill, is probably better than Jordan, if that makes sense.
I think
I like that argument.
We get so hung up on this debate between the two of them that it's like, okay, so LeBron's the second best player of all time, which is debatable, but fine, whatever, sure. Yeah. Like, okay. And the idea of like, Jordan would go crazy in this era, or like LeBron could have easily like seamlessly transitioned into the last era. It's like, yeah, all that's true. They're both phenomenal athletes ahead of their time. They would adjust no matter what the climate was. They would have been fine in the 1940s. They'd be fine in whatever basketball looks like in 30 years. But they're both really, really good. So the idea of trying to like compare the two across their eras to each other or something, it's just a waste of time. People are going to have their picks in this debate, and they're not going to budge from that position.
I almost feel like I see this debate in the same way I see what's the best video game of all time. You can argue, and it comes back to like what's the greatest right now, or compared to what was the greatest in its time, and like Jordan to me is like the original Super Mario Brothers, like way ahead of its time, set a huge standard, revolutionized everything. But like, I don't know. I kind of honestly feel like LeBron is the Mario Odyssey. Like it takes everything that you've done here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the original revolutionized, and you wouldn't have the new one without it. But if you're like, which one is more impressive? I mean, 99% of people are going to be like, well, the new one, it's more modern, it's more mainstream. Like, that's just how it is. It's how we've evolved. It's how the sport's evolved. I don't know. I'm not convinced you just take Jordan and you put him in the modern era that he's going to be the same dominant player. I don't. And I think that's okay because he kind of was the first step in the evolution. So it's still cool. Just as cool, maybe more cool that he was the first.
If you walk in, you pluck 31-year-old Jordan out and immediately put him in a game today, I agree with you. But I think if he grew up in this era, it'd be a whole different story too.
And yeah, maybe that's it. Exactly. That's another good counterpoint. But I think that is just to Chris's point of comparing them. You can almost go into like endless possibilities to where it's pointless. It just depends on what you value at that point.
Yeah. What do we do with like an Elgin Baylor, who I don't think gets mentioned as one of the better players of all time often enough? And I'm not saying he's in the MJ LeBron conversation, but he existed before the 3-point line for the most part. And a very different game back then as well. How do you compare him across eras now where the game has changed so much based on spacing? I mean, at a certain level, the game still resembles itself, obviously. There's still a ton of similarities, but it's almost impossible to just go even 10 years back.
Well, and it makes me think, like, what was Jordan's 3-point percentage? Like
33, something like that.
It's not that good. So if you're Marley in the finals and his crossover is giving you problems, like just back off, make him a mid-range or 3-point shooter.
Well, his mid-range is amazing. That was the problem.
Well, what was his mid-range? Well, I mean, but like you can still back off and
a little bit,
back him off the 3-point line. The crossover is not going to be as devastating.
But that's the biggest difference. When people laud the defensive back then, they're just fantasizing about this idea of the physical play and the fights, and Jeff Van Gundy draped on a player's foot as he's getting dragged into a fight with Alonzo Mourning. And Ryan Russillo made a good point on our podcast I've been listening to, because I've been listening to him a lot recently. And it's like the concept of defense has changed so much to accommodate for how much offense has evolved in the last 10 years, to where think about help defense, even just in the last decade. Specifically, think about the corner three. Back in the tail end of the Nash era, that corner three was there whenever anybody wanted to pull the defense in on a simple drive on a pick and roll and kick it to the corner for a high percentage shot. Now we've already seen defenses evolve past that to where that's a steal. You throw that pass now, it's getting stolen 9 times out of 10. So now the offenses have had to adjust. They now kick it back out to the angle for that kind of like, it's just a different game because everybody has to keep iterating to get better. And so looking at now 20 years ago, or maybe 25 in the middle of Jordan's run, like those defenses are just not at all nuanced, not at all advanced. There's no help. There's no scheme. They don't know how to double team. You watch guys try and double some of the predominant players of that era, like Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, Jordan himself, and it's like they get the ball on the low block, there's a defender on him, and a second defender's kind of like, okay, I'm coming over here, and I've got my arms up, kinda. It's like the slowest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Now think about it today when you have like a Giannis on the low block. The defense is doubling like to force him into a quick reaction. Back then, that didn't happen. So I'm not even saying one era is better than another. It's just everybody gets too hung up on the idea of like, well, back then it was such a better game. No, it's not. Fuck you.
Well, but it goes to Steve Kerr's point of like, yeah, as we all know, as the time goes on, players get slower and worse, and the game slows down. It's like, and that's what's fun is like the game is evolving. It is getting faster. It might not always, depending on how things evolve, but like it's changing. The offense changes, so then the defense changes. It's like the Batman Begins conversation with escalation. Like it's constantly evolving.
Which is great for the fan, great for us as fans, I think, because it just
Yeah.
is better high quality basketball. I mean, watching, like Chris said, he was watching some of his old games. I watched that game against the Bulls against the Suns where Jordan scored 55, and just I was amazed how far apart the defense was so frequently. Like nowadays, like you play defense in somebody's face for the most part. And they were just seemingly so far backed off so often. It was just, and then if you go back even farther, if you go back to like the 70s and watch like the Suns Celtics triple overtime game, like this much space in between everybody all the time. It was crazy.
Yeah,
And the defense isn't like very active, really.
you can get that open. You can get the open 16-footer whenever you wanted it back then. Maybe even the 14-footer.
Yeah.
Teams are like, whatever. It's not somebody right by the basket, so sure. Even if you're a decent shooter, like whatever, we're not coming out.
Which is crazy to think, like, because teams will shoot that at that time, or at least in the 90s, they're like, okay, 14-footer all the time. You're going to give me an open 14-footer, I'm going to hit it every time.
Yeah.
And
It's funny, like back then, like way back when they're doing like hook shots and stuff before, the more modern hook shot. It's like, why do a hook shot? Just drive around them. The defense is so bad. Why even make it hard with a low-ish percentage shot like that? Just lay it up.
Well, that's why, man, I wish there was some way of just seeing how it would be if you put like a LeBron or a Michael Jordan back in the 50s or 60s. Like, no one would know what to do with them at all. They would just carve people
he
up.
could, 8 seconds of coast to coast, easily, layup,
time.
wide open.
Yeah.
Every possession.
Yeah, just dunk.
You get a little hint of that with Julius Erving. Not
Mhm.
to the same extent because he wasn't as good then or as good now as like a LeBron or a Michael Jordan. But that athleticism that mixed with height, mixed with skill was pretty rare at that time. And he was doing things, I mean, especially with the dunks and the layups that people just hadn't seen before. I think it'd be like that, but like times 5.
Yeah. No,
But it's interesting.
agree with that fully.
Think about it this way too. Like Jordan is able to kind of weave through this defense so effortlessly. He's doing that with all these bodies around. Now, granted, a lot of them are stiffs. We know about some of the stiff white guys who just got by in the '90s because they were tall. But even so, there's no spacing in that game because they're shooting like the most prolific 3-point shooters, like a Dan Marley, are shooting like 4 a game. That's it. God forbid you're actually not one of those guys. You might take 1. So there's no spacing back then, and Jordan is still able to weave his way through traffic so effortlessly. Now imagine him with today's spacing.
God.
Yeah.
Defenses would be completely different against him, though, because they'd kind of they'd almost zone against him and just all rotate and be like, all right, stop, cut off the drive immediately.
Essentially, yeah, but he would find a way to adapt. Just like LeBron would in any era, because they're both really high IQ, willing to do whatever it takes players. It's the same reason where people are like, well, like Larry Bird made a high percentage of threes, but he didn't really shoot many. It's like, yeah, because he didn't practice them until later in his career, because he didn't think the shot had that much value at the time. Towards the end, he started to, and he almost made 40% of them. Imagine if he had actually been trying in practice his entire career.
Oh, God. As good of a shooter he was. My God.
I wonder sometimes about like how, just talking about the way that like the times evolve and things change and perceptions, like how did anyone ever think that like bell bottoms were like normal? You know what I mean? Or like the fashions that are there. Like it feels like the fashion these days is like what's normal, and like it's almost hard for me to see it drastically changing, although I know that's being naive, but it's like it feels like these days is normal. Even the 90s, like baggy super jeans and like these gross huge t-shirts. And
I don't know. I mean, think about it. Everything with fashion is pretty cyclical, I always thought. So if you look at nowadays, there's a lot of crop tops, a lot of skin showing. And there may be a time in 15, 20 years where like, how did people wear such little clothing? Not from a prudish type of stance, from just God, everybody like showed their stomach off all the time. Why? Like maybe that's just how maybe the fashion will move. And so it's just, you're right, because I think back to the early 2000s thinking wearing puka shell necklace and my open short sleeve button up shirt with my undershirt on was like, well, why? Yeah, this is always going to be the way it is. My frosted tips, like,
yeah, I knew that was not going to last. I had it too, though. That was cool. Frosted tips were the shit.
But I mean, really, like you said, at the time, though, it felt like, yeah, this is just normal. This is just how it's going to be. And of course it wasn't.
Yeah, well, I wonder how that will change. I wonder how the NBA will change, too. I think it's really...
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen things I think we thought that we're never going to see, and it's already happened. Like a shooter as good as Steph Curry, or like the upper half of the NBA at this point. Like, everyone's so good at shooting.
All 5 players on the floor will shoot threes now. Forget, like, if you don't have that, you're kind of like, you're disadvantaged right now for
Yeah.
not shooting threes.
I mean, you can get away with one.
Yeah, 1.
That's it, though. You can't you can't have 2 guys who can't shoot, which is why I'm not sure how well the Lakers would have done in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a true story. Well,
I think that's
turning into 25-minute basketball conversation. I like it.
Yeah, I know. I had another topic. Where am I going to get there? We'll save it for next week. It's not going anywhere. We're still going to be in quarantine, kind of.
Well, I don't know. The state of Arizona is all opened up now, so
we'll
go out, have fun.
Freaking see, I guess. I really hope that, of course, it stays open and everything's fine. But I have some doubts.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting because Arizona and California are so drastically different on their approach on this. Because California is like, they already announced that all of their Cal State University schools are going to be shut down through the fall, which seems like a little preemptive to me, but fine, that's them. They've been hit probably a little bit harder. But then right next door is Arizona that's like, here you go, open up. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes.
And Arizona's not even that bad of a contrast because we're behind a lot of other states right now. Many of them were just like, all right, it's May 1st, here we go.
Yep, Texas is a little bit like that.
There's a small part of me that not actually hopes this, but in spite hopes that like it's just like crazy and breaks out because
it won't matter. Because the thing is, I wanted to feel the same way you did because I understand where you're coming from. There is no amount of preponderance of facts that will sway someone who has already got their head in the fucking sand on this. So at that point, it's just like we'd be killing people for no reason because then they'll be like, it doesn't matter, we had to reopen for the economy, or like, it's just because China lied about the original numbers, or this, that, and the other thing. And I'm just like, whatever.
No, and I'm kind of in agreement. Like, I think we have to balance. I would have probably preferred a little bit slower of reopen, but like we had to start. We can't just keep these people out of jobs. That's my take on it. But to go to the store and see like a ton of people, no one's wearing masks, no one cares. It annoys me.
Man, it's so localized because Courtney just went to the store tonight and she said 90% of the people in the store were wearing masks.
Yeah. See, we don't even have that anymore in Flag. Now Flag has been pretty low, but it frustrates me. But
I mean, I don't know the difference between Phoenix and Flagstaff though. I mean, Phoenix is obviously much more population dense than Flagstaff, so
but
it makes
Flagstaff is also more liberal, so you'd expect people to be more on the side of wear masks until it's absolutely safe. So it's been a little strange, to say the least.
So I guess, and I don't actually wish for it, but to Chris's point, it's like we reacted at a pretty good amount of time to do social distancing, and everybody's like, oh, see, this is a hoax. It's like, no, the distancing's working.
Worked, yeah.
Yep.
But
I don't remember if I said that on the show, but you guys have me on record off the show for sure talking about that exact thing that was going to happen. And sure enough, it came to pass.
Yeah. So now we'll see. Hopefully.
I mean,
we've cleared
obviously, best case scenario is that the numbers of people who actually have gotten it are way higher than we know of, and people actually have good immunity type of thing to it. And we open up the economy, it's like, oh, hey, the cases aren't that bad. Obviously, I don't think that's probably not going to happen, but man, that'd be cool if it was, and be like, hey, all right, let's start going more. Okay, cool.
It could be.
I don't think it's going to happen, but I just hope.
And there's still a chance of vaccines done sooner than expected. We have a lot of medical science at our disposal, perhaps better than ever. But even so,
Bill Gates is telling you to get a vaccine. I mean, come on. You really want to take it from that guy?
More exciting, though, there was research that infusing old people, the idea, the application is by putting plasma from a young person into an old person, it helps to like reverse the aging process. And they've done it in mice, and it seems to be working. So pretty early on. I don't even think it's been peer reviewed yet, but I'm excited. I've started harvesting children for this. So I'm ready for when it happens.
You stay the hell away from my kids.
Just in case.
I said we know 3.
Well, I mean, Dave, right now you're in a good situation. You have your donors ready to go.
I mean, they sleep upstairs. Like, I mean, it's really easy to. I don't even have to work at it.
Yeah, hook them up to a machine and
you'll solve the college fund problem with that too. So that's nice.
I mean, wait, does this actually kill them or like?
Oh, I mean, if it fails, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard donating plasma is extremely painful, but you will feel better when your tear ducts are that of a 25-year-old man.
So what I'm hearing is that the boomers were supposed to start dying off, and now they're not going to.
That's what some of the takes were. I think we wait until all the boomers are dead first, and we're the boomers, and then we come back to being millennials again. The re-millennials. It'll be our new thing.
Wait a minute, my parents are technically boomers. I don't want them to die off.
Actually, what we do is we become re-millennials by absorbing all the plasma from all the new generation so that they die off, and then we just kind of we become the only generation. And then we start farms
hypothesis.
of children.
So I see no problem with this theory.
Do we repopulate then, or?
Well, no, because we don't need to, because we're just in perpetuity.
Well, yeah, but we have to make new young ones to harvest, or we're going to get older and then
yeah,
die.
no, that's what the farm is for. Yeah, so we farm them.
Have you ever read Brave New World?
No, I haven't. I fail to see how that's relevant here.
It sounds almost exactly like that, actually.
Well, we learned a lot today.
We did.
You know, at the end, it's always nice to come back and circle back on your moral and really drive home the message for kids. You know, the don't do drugs, etc. And I think this episode's takeaway is going to be one of the most poignant yet.
Yeah, well, we don't want the kids to do drugs. That contaminates the plasma.
Right.
So that's a good point. Thank you, Chris, for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, please stay clean. I need to get my bang for my buck when I absorb you.
Well, that's the end of this episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, or youtube.com/objectionnetwork for new videos 7 days a week. We'll see you next time.